The silent invasion. The Kilari thought they understood everything about Earth. For 3 centuries, their cloaked observation posts had orbited our planet, watching, recording, and analyzing. Their crystalline data cores held petabytes of information about human behavior, society, and technology. They believed they knew us completely. They were wrong. High Commander Nixis stood before the Kilari High Council, her iridescent scales shifting colors with confidence as she presented the final invasion plan. The massive holographic display behind her showed Earth's major population centers, power grids, and military installations, all carefully mapped and categorized. Our analysis confirms that humans remain a Level 2 civilization, Nixis announced, her translator converting her harmonic speech patterns into the formal language of the Council. They still burn fossil fuels, maintain primitive nuclear arsenals, and haven't achieved unified planetary governance. Their technology poses no threat to our quantum-based systems. The Council members chittered in agreement, their crystalline eyes reflecting the holographic light. They had conquered 17 other worlds using the same methodology. Observe, analyze, and slowly infiltrate until resistance became impossible. Earth would be no different. Implementation begins tomorrow, Nixis continued. Our biomimetic drones will replace key human leaders in government and military positions. Within 6 months, Earth's major nations will peacefully submit to Kilari guidance. No blood need be shed. But Junior Observer Talis, monitoring communications from Earth that night, noticed something odd. The humans' primitive digital networks were exhibiting unusual patterns. Data flows didn't match any previous observations. She considered reporting it, but decided against it. Surely the High Command had already accounted for such minor anomalies. The invasion began as planned. Biomimetic drones, perfect copies of human leaders, were deployed worldwide. The first phase went flawlessly. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals were quietly replaced, their originals held in stasis aboard orbital facilities. The drones began implementing subtle policy changes, preparing humanity for eventual revelation of their new reality. Then everything went wrong. It started with a seemingly insignificant event in a small tech company in Bangalore. A junior systems administrator named Raj Patel noticed that his company's quantum encryption algorithms were producing impossible results. The numbers suggested that someone, or something, was intercepting and modifying secure communications at a fundamental level. Raj didn't report it to his superiors. Instead, he posted his findings on an obscure programming forum. Within hours, tech specialists worldwide began reporting similar anomalies. A network security expert in Seoul connected it to strange behaviors in several world leaders. A teenager in Lagos traced unusual patterns in satellite communications. The Kilari hadn't understood something fundamental about human nature. Our chaos was our strength. They had studied our formal power structures, our official channels of communication, our documented technologies. But they had missed the informal networks, the underground connections, the millions of small innovations and adaptations that happened every day without official sanction. Their perfect infiltration plan had overlooked the power of human curiosity and connection. While they focused on controlling governments and military forces, countless individuals worldwide were noticing small inconsistencies, sharing observations, and forming conclusions. By the time High Commander Nixis realized something was wrong, it was too late. The humans' seemingly primitive internet had evolved into something the Kilari hadn't predicted. A vast neural network of human minds working together, sharing information, finding patterns. Their digital networks might have been technologically inferior, but they were organic, adaptable, and powered by billions of creative human minds. Rad's original post had spawned thousands of investigations. People began testing their leaders, looking for subtle signs of inhuman behavior. The biomimetic drones, perfect in their simulation of official human behavior, couldn't replicate the small imperfections, the tiny inconsistencies that made humans human. When the first drone was exposed, a minor official in Brazil who never showed emotion when drinking coffee. The cascade began. Humans worldwide started implementing simple but effective tests. The drones could perfectly mimic human diplomacy, but stumbled over children's jokes. They could deliver flawless speeches but couldn't improvise a bedtime story. As Nixis watched her perfect plan unravel, she realized the Kilari had made a catastrophic error. They had mistaken technological simplicity for primitive thinking. They had failed to understand that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't in their missiles or machines, but in their messy, chaotic, brilliantly adaptive minds. The first phase of Earth's resistance didn't come from military forces or government agencies. It came from millions of ordinary people, armed with smartphones and an unquenchable curiosity, working together in ways the Kilari's rigid hierarchical minds couldn't predict or counter. As the sun set on the first day of what should have been a perfect invasion, Nixis stood in her command center, watching human communication networks light up like a neural network coming alive. She finally understood what they had overlooked. Humanity's apparent weakness, their decentralized, chaotic nature, was actually their greatest strength. The real war was about to begin, and for the first time in Kilari history, victory was not assured. Digital warfare. The Kilari's quantum computers were perfect, and that was their flaw. Their systems operated with unwavering precision, processing data with crystalline clarity that left no room for error or interpretation. But humanity's digital resistance wasn't about perfection. It was about chaos and creativity. Raj Patel hadn't slept in 3 days. His small apartment in Bangalore had become a command center for what he called Operation Ghost in the Machine. Screens covered every wall, displaying real-time data from a global network of volunteers. Empty coffee cups and takeout containers littered his desk, but his eyes remained sharp, focused on the streams of code flowing across his primary monitor. "They're trying to access the power grid in Detroit," called out Zara Noor, a teenage programming prodigy from Pakistan who'd become one of the resistance's key strategists. She coordinated with their team through encrypted channels that changed protocols every 3 minutes, a system so unpredictable that even the Kilari's quantum processors couldn't crack it. "Let them in," Raj replied, his fingers flying across his keyboard. Time to show them why humans still use obsolete systems. The Resistance had discovered something remarkable about Kilari technology. It couldn't handle human inefficiency. Their quantum systems, designed for perfect data transmission, crashed when faced with intentionally imperfect code. Humanity's primitive digital infrastructure had become their greatest defense. Across the globe, networks of hackers launched what they called chaos protocols. They flooded Kilari systems with human-generated nonsense, memes, corrupted video files, circular logic loops, and contradictory commands. The alien quantum processors, unable to resolve the illogical data streams, began to fail. In orbit, Junior Observer Tallis watched in horror as their superior systems crashed one by one. "Impossible," she whispered, her scales shifting to a pale blue of distress. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. How are they doing this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Isabella Santos, a cognitive science researcher in Brazil, had made a crucial discovery. The Kilari's biomimetic drones weren't just infiltrators. They were nodes in a vast quantum network. Each drone was connected directly to the Kilari's main systems, forming a perfect web of control and communication. Perfect, but vulnerable. Working with Raj's team, Isabella developed what she called a human virus, not a traditional computer virus, but a stream of data designed to trigger emotional responses in the biomimetic drones' neural networks. The drones, programmed to mimic human behavior perfectly, couldn't handle the conflicting emotional inputs. "Send in the cat videos," Raj commanded, allowing himself a small smile. Across the planet, Resistance members began broadcasting carefully curated content directly at known drone leaders. Baby laughter, sunset photographs, dancing videos, cute animal compilations. content that triggered deep emotional responses in human brains, responses that the drones were programmed to mirror but couldn't process. The effect was devastating. The drones, attempting to maintain their perfect human mimicry while processing the emotional content, began to malfunction. Their quantum connections to the main Kilari network became corrupted with human emotional data, spreading the chaos throughout the alien systems. High Commander Nixus watched in mounting horror as her invasion force began to break down. Drone after drone failed, their perfect mimicry dissolving into glitched behaviors that instantly revealed them to their human counterparts. The quantum network, their greatest advantage, had become a liability. But the humans weren't finished. Raj's team had discovered that the Kilari's orbital platforms, designed to be invisible to traditional radar, showed up perfectly on old analog TV antennas. Soon, a network of elderly ham radio operators was tracking every Kilari ship in Earth's orbit, coordinating with modern defense systems to target their vulnerabilities. Their technology is too advanced, Raj explained to a global resistance conference call. They've optimized everything, removed all redundancies, eliminated every inefficiency. They don't have any backup systems that can handle mess and chaos, because they never thought they'd need them. The Resistance's next move was audacious. They began broadcasting Earth's entire digital history, every social media post, every uploaded video, every digital photograph, every blog entry, directly at the Kilari's quantum networks. Petabytes of human thoughts, emotions, arguments, jokes, and dreams flooded the aliens' perfect systems. The Kilari's data cores, designed to process only clean, logical information, began to overload. Their quantum processors, faced with the impossible task of resolving billions of human contradictions, started to shut down. Their perfect network was drowning in humanity's digital chaos. In her command center, Nixus received reports of entire fleets going dark, their systems overwhelmed by the flood of human data. The biomimetic drones were either offline or stuck in loops, endlessly trying to process human emotional responses they couldn't understand. We never imagined, she transmitted to the High Council, that their technological inadequacies would be weaponized against us. Their digital networks aren't primitive. They're evolved to handle the chaos of human consciousness. We built perfect systems for a perfect species. They built imperfect systems for an imperfect species. And in this battle, imperfection is winning. As the second phase of the invasion collapsed, Raj finally allowed himself to rest. On screens around him, Kilari systems continued to fall, overwhelmed by the beautiful chaos of human digital existence. They had turned the internet, humanity's messy, illogical, emotional creation, into a weapon that no perfect system could withstand. The war wasn't over, but humanity had found its edge. Against the perfect crystalline systems of the Kilari, they had deployed their greatest weapon, the glorious imperfection of the human experience. The underground network. While the digital war raged in cyberspace, humanity's real strength emerged in the shadows of the old world. The Kilari had expected resistance through technology, through military might, through official channels. They never expected resistance through paper notes, chalk marks, and children's games. In the ancient catacombs beneath Paris, Professor Marielle Durand unfolded a crumpled paper map by candlelight. Around her, a dozen resistance members huddled in the darkness, their faces illuminated only by flickering flames. None of them carried phones or any modern technology that could be tracked. The old smuggling routes are active again, Marielle announced, her finger tracing lines on the weathered paper. From Paris to Berlin, London to Moscow, we've established what we call the analog network. The network was brilliantly simple. While the Kilari monitored every digital communication, every satellite signal, every electronic pulse, humans returned to ancient methods of communication. Resistance cells used techniques borrowed from medieval merchants, World War II resistance fighters, and Cold War spies. In New York, children played hopscotch with chalk patterns that were actually coded messages. In Tokyo, Elderly women gossiped in parks using hand fan signals to relay intelligence about Kilari movements. In Cairo, street vendors arranged their wares in patterns that transmitted critical information to knowing eyes. The Kilari's advanced surveillance systems, designed to intercept and decode the most sophisticated human technology, were useless against these analog methods. Their biomimetic drones could perfectly mimic human leaders, but couldn't understand the subtle social cues and cultural contexts that made the underground network function. In her underground command center, Mariel received a message carried by a young girl playing with a skipping rope. The rope's knots contained a binary code. Kilari forces were planning a major operation to shut down Earth's remaining power grids. They still think we need technology to fight, Mariel mused, decoding the message. They don't understand that humans thrived for thousands of years without it. Across the globe, the resistance adapted ancient techniques to modern needs. Native American smoke signals were modified to transmit complex messages across vast distances. African drum codes carried battle plans through jungles. Australian Aboriginal songlines became secure communication channels. The Kilari were baffled. Their surveillance showed almost no electronic communication between resistance cells, yet somehow humans were coordinating complex operations across continents. Their drones reported random, meaningless human behaviors, never realizing that a child's playground game or a farmer's fence repair pattern carried crucial intelligence. In London, street artists began creating murals that contained hidden messages in their color patterns. In Mumbai, women wove sari patterns that encoded resistance communications. In Rio de Janeiro, samba dancers incorporated movements that transmitted military intelligence during carnival performances. High Commander Nixis grew increasingly frustrated. How are they coordinating without technology? She demanded, watching humans engage in what seemed like normal daily activities. Their primitive methods of communication should make organized resistance impossible. But she had fundamentally misunderstood human nature. The very primitiveness of these methods made them powerful. Humans didn't need quantum computers to recognize patterns, didn't need advanced AI to interpret context, didn't need satellite networks to maintain connections. These skills were hardwired into human brains through millennia of evolution. The Resistance's greatest triumph came during what became known as the Silent Week. Acting on intelligence gathered through the analog network, resistance cells worldwide simultaneously abandoned all electronic devices. Cities went dark. Communications networks fell silent. To the Kilari's advanced sensors, it appeared that human civilization had suddenly crumbled. But beneath the electronic silence, humans were more connected than ever. Motorcycle couriers carried messages between cities. Farmers used ancient celestial navigation to coordinate movements. Underground printing presses produced newsletters that passed from hand to hand. The Kilari deployed more drones, expanded their surveillance, and increased their quantum computing power, all useless against an enemy that had essentially stepped back in time while maintaining modern tactical sophistication. They've built their entire invasion plan on the assumption that we're dependent on modern technology, Mariel explained to her resistance cell. They never considered that we might choose to abandon it. Every step they take to counter our technology pushes us further into methods they can't understand or detect. In her command center, Nixis received another report of a failed operation. Her drones had raided what sensors indicated was a major resistance communication hub, only to find an empty warehouse where children had been playing traditional games in the dust. The truth slowly dawned on the Kilari. Humans weren't bound by their technology. Unlike the Kilari, who had evolved to become one with their quantum systems, humans could adapt to any level of technological sophistication, including none at all. As the Resistance's analog network expanded, the Kilari's advanced systems became increasingly irrelevant. They had prepared to fight a technological war against a technological civilization. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that could coordinate global resistance using nothing more than chalk marks, children's games, and ancient wisdom. The third phase of Earth's defense revealed humanity's true power. Not the ability to match the Kilari's advanced technology, but the ability to render it meaningless through adaptation and innovation at the most basic level. The Kilari's weakness. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood in her makeshift laboratory deep within an abandoned Tokyo subway station, staring at something impossible. Under her microscope, a sample of Kilari technology was doing something that violated everything she thought she knew about their supposedly superior race. "It's afraid," she whispered, watching the crystalline structure of the quantum processor react to her latest experiment. Around her, other scientists from the underground resistance gathered, their eyes wide with disbelief. The discovery had been accidental. During a raid on a downed Kilari ship, resistance fighters had recovered fragments of their quantum processing cores. Dr. Tanaka, a quantum physicist before the invasion, had noticed something peculiar. The crystals seemed to respond to human proximity in ways that couldn't be explained by known physics. "Their entire civilization is built on perfect order," she explained to the assembled team. "Their quantum technology isn't just tools they use. It's part of their biology. They've evolved to become one with their machines, but that connection has left them vulnerable to something they never considered: chaos at the quantum level." The implications were staggering. The Kilari weren't just using quantum technology. They were quantum technology. Their consciousness existed in a state of quantum coherence that gave them their advanced capabilities, but also made them susceptible to quantum decoherence, the collapse of quantum states into classical reality. And humans, it turned out, were walking quantum disruptors. Our consciousness, our very way of thinking, creates quantum interference patterns, Dr. Tanaka continued, pulling up readings from her instruments. Every decision we make, every random thought, every creative impulse, they all generate quantum noise that disrupts their coherence. The resistance quickly mobilized to exploit this weakness. Teams of artists, musicians, and dancers were deployed near known Kilari installations. Their creative activities generated waves of quantum disruption that the aliens couldn't defend against. The more spontaneous and improvised the performance, the more effective the disruption. In New Orleans, jazz musicians held impromptu concerts near Kilari command centers, their freestyle improvisations creating quantum chaos that sent the alien systems into disarray. In Mumbai, spontaneous Bollywood dance numbers in the streets caused nearby Kilari ships to lose power. In Rio, capoeira performers disrupted alien communications with their fluid, unpredictable movements. The Kilari were baffled. Their advanced sensors couldn't detect what was causing their systems to fail. Their perfect quantum networks were being disrupted by something they couldn't measure or understand: human creativity and spontaneity. High Commander Nixis felt it herself, a strange distortion in her quantum-enhanced consciousness whenever humans gathered in large numbers. The very chaos of human existence was becoming a weapon against them. "They're not just generating random quantum noise," Dr. Tanaka explained to resistance leaders worldwide. "Our capacity for creativity, for genuine spontaneity, creates quantum patterns that are fundamentally incompatible with Kilari consciousness. We're not just fighting their technology. We're fighting their very nature." The resistance developed what they called quantum flash mobs. Groups would suddenly gather in locations near Kilari installations, engaging in completely spontaneous and unplanned activities. Children would play invented games with no rules. Musicians would compose on the spot. Dancers would move without choreography. Each burst of human creativity sent ripples through the quantum field that disrupted Kilari operations. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Tanaka discovered something even more fundamental about Kilari psychology. "They can't dream," she announced one day, after months of studying captured drone data. "Their quantum consciousness doesn't allow for the kind of random neural firing that creates dreams. They don't have imagination. They can only process what is, not what could be." This revelation led to the Resistance's most powerful weapon yet: stories. Humans began sharing dreams, fairy tales, and impossible fantasies near Kilari installations. Children would tell elaborate make-believe stories. Writers would read fiction aloud. The very concept of imagining something that wasn't real created quantum distortions that the Kilari couldn't process. In her increasingly unstable command center, Nixis watched in horror as her forces began to break down. The perfectly ordered quantum network that connected all Kilari consciousness was being overwhelmed by waves of human imagination and creativity. "They're not just disrupting our technology," she reported to the increasingly concerned High Council. "They're disrupting our ability to think, to process reality. Their minds operate in ways we never imagined possible, ways that make our perfect order impossible to maintain." Dr. Tanaka and her team continued to refine their understanding of the phenomenon. They discovered that certain types of human activity generated stronger quantum disruptions than others. Love songs caused more interference than military marches. Children's laughter was more effective than recorded sounds. Improvised poetry disrupted Kilari systems more than memorized verses. "It's not just chaos," she explained. "It's genuine creativity. The human ability to imagine something new, to bring into existence something that never existed before. That act of creation generates quantum patterns that make their ordered existence impossible." As the fourth phase of Earth's resistance unfolded, humanity's greatest weakness, our messy, chaotic, dreaming minds, had become our greatest strength. Against an enemy that had achieved perfect quantum coherence, our very incoherence became a weapon they couldn't defend against. The Kilari had evolved to become one with their perfect technology, but in doing so, they had lost something essential: the ability to dream, to create, to imagine. And in a universe governed by quantum mechanics, imagination turned out to be the most powerful force of all. Victory through unity. The final confrontation between humanity and the Kilari didn't take place on a battlefield. It happened in a kindergarten classroom in Singapore. Lin Wei-jun, a 5-year-old girl with pigtails and a missing front tooth, stood before High Commander Nixis, who had come to witness humanity's surrender. Instead of fear, the child showed only curiosity at the iridescent alien leader, whose scales shifted colors in the fluorescent light. "Would you like to play pretend?" Jun asked, holding up a crayon drawing of a purple dragon having tea with a robot. That simple question, and the pure imagination behind it, sent ripples through the quantum field that made every Kilari in the room physically shudder. In that moment, watching a child create impossible worlds with nothing but paper and crayons, the Kilari finally understood their fundamental miscalculation. Humanity hadn't just resisted their invasion. They had revealed a power that the Kilari had sacrificed in their pursuit of technological perfection: the ability to imagine what had never been. Dr. Tanaka's research had spread worldwide, leading to a unified resistance strategy that no one could have predicted. Every human on Earth was encouraged to embrace their most creative, imaginative impulses. Art galleries hosted exhibitions of children's drawings. Streets became stages for impromptu performances. Scientists worked alongside artists, combining quantum physics with creative expression. The Kilari's perfect quantum network, which had seemed invincible, began to collapse under the weight of billions of human minds all dreaming, creating, and imagining at once. Their ships fell from the sky, their drones shut down, and their command structures dissolved into quantum chaos. But something unexpected happened as their systems failed. The Kilari began to change. Junior observer Talis was the first to experience it. As she watched a street performer in Barcelona tell stories to children, the quantum field disruption caused by their laughter and imagination didn't just interfere with her consciousness. It transformed it. For the first time in her species' history, she began to dream. "We were wrong," Nixis announced to the High Council, her voice trembling with newfound emotion. "We thought technological perfection was the pinnacle of evolution. We never understood that imperfection, the ability to imagine, to dream, to create something from nothing, is the true mark of an advanced civilization." The war ended not with surrender, but with transformation. The Kilari, their quantum consciousness irrevocably altered by prolonged exposure to human creativity, began to change. Their rigid hierarchical society started to evolve. Young Kilari, influenced by human children, learned to play pretend. Their scientists, freed from the constraints of perfect order, began to imagine new possibilities. A new era of cooperation emerged. The Kilari offered their advanced technology, while humans taught them how to dream. Together, they began to explore the universe not just as it was, but as it could be. In the Singapore kindergarten, Jun continued to draw, now joined by young Kilari, who were learning the joy of creation. Their quantum biology, once locked in perfect order, vibrated with new possibilities. Their scales began to shift colors not just with emotions, but with imagination. Dr. Tanaka's final research paper, The Quantum Mechanics of Imagination, became the foundation for a new field of study. Humanity's chaotic creativity, combined with Kilari quantum technology, opened doorways to possibilities that neither species had dreamed possible. The resistance networks transformed into cultural exchange programs. The ancient analog methods of communication became art forms, preserved and studied by both species. The underground bunkers were converted into museums, remembering not just the war, but the moment when humanity's greatest perceived weakness became its greatest strength. High Commander Nixus, who had once seen humans as primitive beings to be conquered, found herself sitting in that Singapore classroom, learning to draw with crayons. Her perfectly ordered mind, trained for millennia in quantum coherence, experienced something entirely new. The joy of creating something that had never existed before. Raj Patel, still manning his screens in Bangalore, watched as Kilari quantum networks began to pulse with new patterns, not the rigid structures of perfect order, but the flowing, ever-changing rhythms of imagination. The digital warfare that had begun the resistance had evolved into a symphony of human and alien consciousness, each enriching the other. Professor Marielle Duran's underground network became the foundation for a new kind of communication, blending Kilari quantum technology with human analog methods to create something entirely new, a way of sharing not just information, but dreams. And in laboratories around the world, Dr. Tanaka and her colleagues worked alongside Kilari scientists, exploring the quantum mechanics of creativity itself. They discovered that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than either species had imagined, but only when they dared to imagine it together. The victory humanity achieved wasn't just about survival. It was about teaching an advanced civilization that true advancement lies not in achieving perfection, but in preserving the ability to dream imperfectly. The chaos that the Kilari had seen as primitive became the seed of a revolution that transformed both species. In the end, the twist that nobody expected wasn't just that humanity won. It was that both species discovered a truth about the universe. In a quantum reality, imagination isn't just power, it's everything. And humanity's gift for dreaming became not just a weapon of war, but a bridge to the stars. For in that kindergarten classroom in Singapore, watching children of two species draw impossible things together, the future of both civilizations was being created, one crayon at a time.